Alright guys, we're going on a road trip this time, and I have not finished solving this problem yet. I have actually just started setting it up, so I don't even know what answer we're working towards. We're going to get there together. But it says we're going on a road trip that is 2,100 kilometers. So to start, let's fix my label. We're actually in kilometers. And we're going to pick up two friends who 150 miles into the trip, I'm just going to... No, 150 kilometers. I gotta fix my brain. And we'll drop off with 150 kilometers left in the trip. Now, really, that's not gonna be 150 kilometers. That'll be 150 kilometers back from the end. So 1950, if we would subtract 150 from 2,100. So we do our final total amount driven minus the 150, that'll get us to the 1950, so that's actually 1950 kilometers. And what we're talking about is how much we're going to pay for gas, right? So the car consumes 6 liters of gas for every 100 kilometers. So we could either say, I'm going to move down the page a little ways so that I have space. How do they spell liter here? You'll find that there are a couple different ways to spell liter depending on what part of the world you're in. 6 liters for every 100 kilometers, or not equal, right? Or we could write this 100 kilometers over 6 liters. These represent the same thing, but we're not going to set these equal because the labels change, the numbers change, right? But we could use either of these rates to discuss the car, right? We burn 6 liters of gas per 100 kilometers, or we can drive 100 kilometers on 6 liters of gas. So now, we're still just writing down important stuff. And then the other thing, so I'm going to draw a little squiggly line because we're just still writing down things we know, is gas costs $1.20 for every liter. Alright, so let's go back up to our picture. We know in this, I'm going to highlight, right? Let's use a highlighter because we're drawing a picture. In this section, he's alone. And in this section, he's alone. Now, if you want to make more sense of this problem, what I'm going to tell you is in the middle of this, I'm guessing a middle, by the way, so please don't count boxes or anything. This is an approximate. This is probably their destination. Because on a road trip, you're normally going round trip. So instead of drawing this like a circle, I drew this like a straight line. But this is probably his home. And this is probably also back at home, right? That's why this part is alone and this part is alone for driving. Because he had to get to his friend's house where the two friends were, pick them up, and then they went to their destination. Then they drove back to friend's house, dropped them off, and then got back to home. So that's how this can make sense. This should really be a circle, but that would make it harder to think about. So if we talk about the amount of time he spent alone, there's 150 kilometers here and 150 kilometers here. So we know he spent 300 kilometers alone. So I'm going to write that down. And we can calculate how much gas how much he paid for gas there. We'll come back to that. Let's talk about this section in the middle. Let's choose a highlighter color for that. I don't know, green. I got a green pen, so might as well. So this is the part of the trip where he had friends with him. Right, so that stopped at 1950 kilometers, and it started at 150. So if we do that subtraction, 1900, 1800 is how far they traveled together. Right, so we're going to take that down to our information that we know and say 1800 together. Sorry, my handwriting's a little sloppy this morning. So if we think about what, I'm just going to admit that name is hard to pronounce for me, so Sahish, maybe? If we talk about what Sahish paid alone, well, if it's 100 kilometers, gets 6 liters, or takes 6 liters of gas, 300 kilometers well, if we try to set this equal to the ratio or the rate that we know 100 kilometers needs 6 liters of gas. So we're actually using this ratio or rate. And we can come over here and say, well, how do I get from 100 to 300? Well, we multiply by 3, right? So if this multiplies by 3, then this is going to multiply by 3. And we get 18 liters while alone. So then, I'm going to squiggly line. If we want to know how much money that cost, well, 18 liters will cost how much money? I'm just going to put a dollar sign here right now. We can set that equal to our other ratio of $1.20 for 1 liter. So, well, 1 liter would go on top because we have to keep our labels equal to each other. So we put $1.20 down here. That's really messy, so I'm going to try that again. $1.20. How do we go from 1 to 18? That should be nicer math. That is a multiplication by 18. So just to make sure I don't make any mistakes, let's grab our calculator. 1.2 times 18. $21.60 in gas alone. Right? So that is for gas alone. The 1,800 kilometers together, they tell us we split the gas evenly. But let's just go ahead and solve it for how much that cost, and then we'll split it up 3 ways. So same solution process for the 1,800 kilometers. We're going to set that over how many liters? Well, we don't know yet. But actually, we could. We could use the fact that we solved this one up here in orange for his alone time. We can go from orange to green. All right, how do we go from 300 kilometers to 1,800 kilometers? Well, that's a times 6. So the same thing will happen to our denominator. So numerator to numerator was a times 6. So we'll go denominator to denominator times 6. So 18 times 6 is 108. Then, again, use our ratio that we have for cost and say, okay, 108 liters. And actually, I'm going to set this one up with liters on bottom to show you how that would work. So 108 liters equal to, well, 1 liter. Oh, yeah, this is our unit rate. So we just started discussing unit rates in class. But 1 liter to get to 108 liters, that's times 108. $1.20, we do the same thing. Remember, this is a road trip. They're going pretty far. So 108 times $1.20. $129.60. $100. $129.60. Sorry, getting tripped up on my numbers. So if that's the together amount that they spent, $129.60. Then for each of them, we'll want to divide that by 3. Right, so each of them during that middle section of the road trip, I'm actually going to go ahead and full screen this so you guys can see my notes a little bit easier. During that section of the road trip, that middle portion, that 1,800 kilometers, they spent $129.60. That divided by 3 is $43.20. So then, to figure out what Sahish paid alone, we take our $43.20 that he paid when split up the middle part of the trip, and our $21.60 that he had from the other parts of the trip, the beginning and the end. We add those together, and our final answer here would be $64.80. All right, guys, so like I often say, if it doesn't make sense, draw a picture. One of the best ways we can start to make things make sense is to draw a picture. All I did was say, well, this was alone, this was alone, this was together. Start writing down things that I know. And remember that mathematically, one of those rules that we really like is we can do anything we want as long as we keep things equal or keep things with the same labels. So these equivalent ratios or equivalent rates, whichever way you want to talk about them, This is how we're going to solve a lot of problems now. Is say, well, what can I relate to what, and how do I get there? Keep those problems coming in, and I will respond as fast as I can.